Distinguished members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, dear colleagues, good day to all of you and a very warm welcome to this high-level panel at the 14th Global Forum for Food and Agriculture, the GFFA in short. It is hosted by the European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development, Janusz Wojciechowski. Thank you, Commissioner, for being the panel's host and a panel member for the third time in a row. Right up front, some very short housekeeping announcements. Interpretation is available from and into English, French, German, Polish, and Spanish. You can choose your favorite language by clicking on the little globe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Due to the virtual format of the panel, questions from the audience can only be asked in the chat function of Zoom, or rather the streaming facility that you have. We will come to the questions from the audience towards the end of this session. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to mention a sad occurrence at this point. Jürgen Köhler, a colleague in the Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development of the European Commission, has unfortunately passed away last November, only a few months into his retirement. Jürgen has organized the GFFA panels for the Commission during many years, and all among us who have met him and worked with him will surely keep him in dear memory. The title of this year's panel is Better Stewards of the Earth. How can we use soil more sustainably? It is a bit of a continuation of last year's panel, which concentrated on climate change and the contribution of agriculture to it. We're all aware that the urgent need for a more sustainable use of soil has become a huge subject, not only in the minds of specialists, but also in the mind of an ever broader public. Even Netflix consecrates a documentary to this subject. I'm therefore sure that we will have a very interesting panel. Allow me to briefly introduce the panel members. I welcome Elizabeth Nzimadala, the president of the East African Farmers Federation. Mrs. Nzimadala, I'm particularly happy to see you again, as you were a member of the panel last year. Mrs. Nzimadala has so many functions and mandates in agriculture and farming in and beyond Africa that I must ask you to consult her CV online if you want to know it all. But anyway, I'm very happy that you are here. Thank you for that. I am delighted to be able to greet the Minister of Agriculture of the Republic of Chile, Maria Emilia Undurraga. As we all know, Chile is a very narrow but very, very long country, almost 4,300 kilometers long, with very diverse and challenging climate and soil conditions. In the light of this, we are very interested to hear your contributions, Minister Undurraga. Thank you very much for having linked up and to be available for us. And it is with great pleasure that, as in the previous two panels, I announce the presence of Johann Joe Svinen, a very well-known giant in agricultural economics. He used to teach and research at the Catholic University in Leuven here in Belgium. Since the beginning of 2020, however, he is the Director General of the International Food Policy Research Institute, the IFPRI, in Washington, D.C. As most of you will know, the IFPRI provides policy solutions to sustainably reduce poverty and end hunger and malnutrition. Thank you for being with us again, Jo, and for contributing to our discussion. For each subject, Professor Svinen will make introductory remarks, as it were, a pitch to open the subject, and then you, the panelists, may react to what he has said and expand on it. And I almost forgot myself, I am Peter Bader, a recently retired official of DG Agriculture and Rural Development in the European Commission, and as you can see, it is my task to navigate us all through the event. Before we start, it is my pleasure to announce a welcome message from the German Minister of Food and Agriculture, Mr. Özdemir. Let us watch the video now, please.
Sehr geehrter Herr Kommissar Wojciechowski, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich grüße Sie herzlich aus dem Bundesministerium für Ernährung und Landwirtschaft in Berlin. eine der bevölkerungsreichsten Städte der Europäischen Union. 3,7 Millionen Einwohnerinnen und Einwohner. Und jeder und jede von ihnen braucht Fläche. Nicht nur zum Wohnen und Leben, sondern auch für die Ernährungssicherung. Stellen Sie sich einmal eine Fläche von 20 Metern mal 100 Meter vor. 2000 Quadratmeter oder bildlich ausgedrückt knapp ein Viertel eines Fußballfeldes. Diese Fläche steht jedem Menschen auf der Welt aktuell zur Verfügung für den Anbau von Nahrungsmitteln bis zu Energiepflanzen. Zur Einordnung: Für 1 Kilogramm Rindfleisch braucht man knapp 37 Quadratmeter Ackerfläche. In Deutschland liegt der Pro-Kopf-Verbrauch jährlich aktuell bei 14 Kilogramm. Fast ein Viertel dieser Fläche würde dafür also schon aufgebraucht sein. Auf 1,5 Milliarden Hektar Ackerfläche bauen wir weltweit Pflanzen an. Nur ein Bruchteil aller Böden ist für die Landwirtschaft geeignet. Über 90% der weltweiten Nahrungsmittelproduktion hängt aber von unseren Böden ab. Ernährungssicherung und das Vorhandensein gesunder Böden sind untrennbar verbunden. Bodenschutz spielt daher bei der weltweiten Ernährungssicherung eine Schlüsselrolle. Damit sind unsere Böden eine unserer wichtigsten Ressourcen überhaupt. Ein gesunder Boden ist auch der größte terrestrische Kohlenstoffspeicher unseres Planeten. Allein unsere Böden in Deutschland speichern rund 2,5 Milliarden Tonnen organischen Kohlenstoff. Daraus folgt: Bodenschutz ist auch ein aktiver und vor allem notwendiger Beitrag zum Kampf gegen die Klimakrise. Es ist daher ein wichtiges Zeichen, dass sich das diesjährige 14. Global Forum for Food and Agriculture ganz der nachhaltigen Bewirtschaftung unserer Böden widmet. Unsere Böden und damit auch wir alle stehen aber vor großen Herausforderungen. Erstens: Wir müssen gegen die Klimakrise ankämpfen. Nutzbare Böden müssen resilient gemacht werden und erhalten werden. Zweitens: Wir müssen fast 8 Milliarden Menschen ernähren, Tendenz steigend. Jeden Tag kommen fast 226.000 Menschen hinzu. Es macht jedes Jahr fast 82,4 Millionen. Böden sind eine nicht erneuerbare, begrenzte Ressource. Bei steigender Weltbevölkerung stehen jedem von uns also noch weniger Fläche zu. Und drittens schließlich: Jährlich gehen weitere Flächen durch Versiegelung und Umweltverschmutzung verloren oder sind oft über Jahrzehnte hinweg nicht mehr bewirtschaftbar. Und viertens: Nicht nur Nahrung, auch Böden müssen gerecht verteilt werden. Insbesondere müssen die junge Generation und Frauen gerechten Zugang zu Böden haben. Dies ist in vielen Teilen der Welt immer leider noch nicht der Fall. Fünftens: Wir müssen für gesunde Böden sorgen. Degradationen wie Erosion und Versauerung stellen eine große Herausforderung dar. In manchen Regionen schlägt sich das bereits in den Erträgen nieder. Wir stehen vor Herausforderungen, können diese aber auch gemeinsam bewältigen. Welche Rolle spielt die Politik dabei? Erstens: Nahrung, Böden, aber auch Wissen müssen gerecht verteilt werden. Wissenstransfer ist von großer Bedeutung. Hier kann die Politik eine große Rolle spielen. Und schließlich zweitens: Die Politik kann durch gezielte Maßnahmen bei Investitionen einen wichtigen Beitrag leisten. Moderne Techniken, neue Technologien und ökologische Anbauverfahren ermöglichen eine bodenschonende Bewirtschaftung und helfen, Ressourcen zu sparen und Pflanzen zu schützen. Drittens: Politische Entscheidungsträger setzen rechtliche Rahmen für Bodennutzung und Bodenschutz. Ich möchte daher kurz an Beispielen darstellen, was Deutschland und mein Ministerium für unsere Bodengesundheit tun und vor allem in Zukunft tun wollen. In unserer Koalitionsvereinbarung stehen eine Aktualisierung des Bodenschutzgesetzes und die Einrichtung eines Bodenmonitoringzentrums. Im Rahmen des Klimaschutzprogramms 2030 fördern wir ein Modell- und Demonstrationsvorhaben zum Humusaufbau auf Ackerflächen. Ziel ist es, den Effekt lokal angepasster Maßnahmen auf Betriebsebene langfristig zu untersuchen und in einem Zusammenspiel von Wissenschaft und den teilnehmenden Landwirtinnen und Landwirten nachhaltige Handlungsoptionen zu erarbeiten. Lokal angepasste Handlungsoptionen sind wichtig, brauchen aber eine Gesamtstrategie, auch auf europäischer und internationaler Ebene. Deshalb bekennen wir uns klar zum Green Deal, zur Farm-to-Fork-Strategie und zur EU-Bodenstrategie der Europäischen Kommission. Wir unterstützen die internationale 4 für 1000 Initiative, die sich für eine Speicherung von Kohlenstoff in unseren Böden einsetzt. Und in Deutschland wollen wir den Verlust an Boden durch Versiegelung und Bebauung reduzieren. In einem ersten Schritt auf unter 30 Hektar pro Tag, deutlich vor 2030. Unsere Regierung hat sich vorgenommen, Deutschland auf den 1,5 Grad Pfad zu führen. Der Kampf gegen die Klimakrise endet nicht an unseren Grenzen. Bodenschutz endet nicht an Grenzen, denn unsere vielfältigen Agrarhandelsbeziehungen unterstreichen, dass wir wechselseitig von gesunden Böden profitieren können. Deshalb ist es wichtig, dass wir alle an einem Strang ziehen und uns vernetzen und Wissen austauschen. Das GFFA als bedeutende internationale Agrar- und Ernährungskonferenz ist dafür eine der wichtigsten Plattformen. Ich freue mich deshalb auf einen intensiven Austausch im Rahmen des GFFA und Ihres High-Level-Panel zu diesem wichtigen Thema. Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much, Minister. I feel tempted to applaud, but of course you cannot hear us. Today's first round of discussion looks at the following question. How can we reconcile more sustainable land use with the world's growing demand for food? Before we dive into that subject, I would like to give the floor to our host, Commissioner Wojciechowski, for his welcome and his opening words, and then to give the floor to Joe Svinen. Commissioner, please, you have all our attention.
Thank you very much, dear ministers, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this high-level panel. I'm pleased to continue the tradition of an annual panel discussion hosted by the European Union at the Global Forum for Food and Agriculture, even if it takes place in virtual form due to the current circumstances. Given the current circumstances, I would like to begin by extending my wishes to all of you listening today, that you and your families are in good health. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to my fellow panelists who have kindly accepted our invitation. I especially welcome those of you who are joining from a location where it's very early in the morning. We have gathered from all corners of the world this week to discuss a very important topic at this year's forum, as selected by German Ministry of Agriculture, the issue of land use and soil management. I look forward to discussing this topic with you today. On this note, I now hand over to Professor Svinen for his introductory remarks to our first discussion question, which is how can we reconcile more sustainable land use with the world's growing demand for food? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Dear Commissioner, dear Minister, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinguished honor here to share my comments with you at the 2022 Global Forum for Agriculture in the high-level panel, which is organized by the European Commission. I am actually in the, although it may not look like this, but I'm actually in the European Commission offices in Brussels. And as all of you, I wish I was in Berlin today, but I mean, this is very nice also to be hosted here. I think this is a very important panel, as is the tradition now, and I congratulate the European Commission for organizing it. Land and healthy soils are central to the transformation of our global food systems, and as you know, I'm sure many of you have followed the developments of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, and the food systems transformation is crucial for the welfare of the world. The discussion on sustainable land use to improve food security is therefore crucial and timely. We also know by now very well that there are no long-term trade-offs between sustainable land use and ensuring global food security. Increasing food supply in the long term requires that the challenges related to climate change and biodiversity are addressed. Sustainability of productivity, and productivity of existing production system must be increased, and degraded lands must be restored. I have put together a few slides which I would like to share with you now, and just as both as a background and as a introduction to the first set of questions that we will have. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so as we all know, so this is just a general introduction. Soils play a really crucial role in supporting our societies. They are crucial in dealing with crop productivity and nutrition, obviously biodiversity conservation, the livelihoods of many people depending on the soils, and particularly our farmers and our rural communities, water availability and quality, and obviously climate change going forward. If we look at how the world is dealing with this, particularly, I have listed here the Sustainable Development Goals in this diagram. And you see that in many of these development goals and many important development goals, sustainable land use and healthy soils are really playing a crucial role. They have to do with, for example, land degradation, sustainable production system, environmentally sound management, etc. So obviously, I don't have time to go into this in detail, but I think that the important thing is here the pervasiveness of the importance of sustainable land use and healthy soils is important to recognize. However, we are not doing so fantastically in this thing. Over the past 50 years, the area of cropland has continued to grow in the world. We are also using more inputs, here illustrated by the amount of pesticide use. Fertilizer use has a similar development. But at the same time, we see that a significant share of the total land, I mean, 1/5 of the total land area in the world is degraded land. And so this is really a very major concern. But if we also look at another indicator, for example, deforestation of valuable land and land use, there we see that in important areas in the world in terms of forest land, etc., we see that the deforestation is really growing and is projected to continue to grow very importantly, which should really be also of a major concern in terms of sustainable land use objectives. At the same time, what we see is that since we have made tremendous progress over the 25-year between roughly 1990 and 2015 in reducing hunger, improving global food security. But since roughly 2015, the middle of the last decade, things have turned around. Not only has the progress flattened out, but actually has been reversed. And so the numbers that you see here were projections before COVID-19 hit us, and we know things have gone worse since then. And so this is really a very major concern. At the same time, we see this, the pressure we are putting on our land use, and at the same time, global food security not improving, but actually worsening in recent years. So how can we reconcile these things? And so here I'm just going to launch the debate, because I'm really looking forward to the comments by our panel members here, but making two slides, actually, one with a set of general points. One is that sustainable land management is really crucial, pivotal to enhance a lot of these objectives which I just referred to. And I think the crucial point there is the systematic and the holistic approach of doing this, not just looking at it as a single element, but as part of a broader solution. But at the same time, although we need a global approach, we really need to look at it from a local perspective. I mean, the solutions have to be adapted to the local circumstance, have to be integrated in a broader perspective. We need policy innovation bundles, if you want. Bundles meaning innovations on the institutional side, on the policy side, on the technological side. And for that to be effective, we have to make sure that everybody who is involved in this thing along the value chain, as I've listed it here, meaning the people who are working on the land, but also the people who are working on the products of the land and are consuming it, have to be engaged in changing these things. And so we not only have to change the behavior of farmers or the stewards of the land, but also those who are using the products of the land. And we will, I'm sure we'll come back to that later in the session. And so my last slide here, I just want to give you an example. This is from my own organization, the IFPRI and the CGIAR. And so this is a number of studies that we have done. And so you don't have to go into the details here, and I don't have time. But the crucial point is things are possible. Changes are possible, okay? There's a number of studies we have done on changes in management practices, and we see as a result of it, productivity of land goes up, resilience of the land improves, or the system improves, and mitigation, climate mitigation, there is a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So these things are possible if we just come up with the right type of solutions and the right type of incentives for people and organizations to apply. So with that, Chair, I would be happy to give it back to the panel. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Joe, for this first contribution. Minister Unduraga, I would like to give you the floor first. We have heard interesting things from Joe Svinen. What is your point of view on this subject? I'm very interested to hear from you, in particular, since I have seen on your ministry's website that sustainability is one of the 5 strategic axes in agriculture in Chile. So you have given the subject quite obviously a very deep thought. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Peter. I will talk in Spanish. Voy a hablar en castellano. Agradecer que están en la traducción para poder hablar más fluido y poder compartir.
So I will speak in Spanish because there is a translation available, so I can share my experience from our point of view. So first of all, I would like to welcome all of you. Elizabeth, Janos, Joe, it is great that we are all coming together and are working together here. This is a topic of utmost importance for agriculture, but also for food and nutrition in all countries and all people of the world. We were asked in this round of questions regarding the challenges. And I have to say, one of the main challenges is understanding agriculture as a system, as a process that in the end feeds people. Hence, it also plays a key role in the lives of all of us, for all people. We have 5 strategic axes in which we drafted, and sustainability is one of the most important topics. As Joe already pointed out, we know quite well that soils are the main factor, a key factor, regarding the health of our planet. It plays a vital role. It is not just about life. It also regulates water cycles, carbon sequestration in soils. All of this is linked to soils, and policymakers must manage that. But not only policymakers, everyone who works on soils, because soils are one of the key elements. The agricultural sector is important. We need good practices which allow us to preserve this key element. It is not just agriculture. We must also include other aspects. For instance, the way that soil is organized and how land access is organized. Here, I have to also talk about set-asides. It is really about adapting ecosystems in an integrative approach in order to offset and to create a balance. We want to increase and guarantee the diversity of our entire landscape. We have roughly 12 million hectares in Chile for agriculture and fisheries, or rather livestock farming and agriculture. Chile is a very diverse country. We have all sorts of cultivation methods. We have fruits, cereals. We have all sorts of products, and it depends on the region where you are. It is important to note that productivity is also regional. It depends on the region. So, Now, let's look at the image of climate change. It has transversal effects on all other areas. For example, we have soil degradation. 80% of our soils, in one way or another, are actually degraded. 50% of our soil, of our land, is needed, or rather needs better perspectives on the topic. So less area and less soil, but they need to be managed more efficiently, in a better way. This view, this sustainable view on soils, but on anti-production too, in agriculture, is important. We need to view it as a system. Water systems too are at risk. They are a key challenge for us as well. This local point of view is essential, and it is key for our country too. So our farmers, in the end, must develop and learn a new kind of production. We need to understand how important this is in the long run, too. We need to preserve soil and soil health. Let me just add one more thought. How can we generate an integrative approach so that all people, not only economically, but in all areas, understand agriculture as a tool for social development? We need to have a comprehensive understanding. So what does that imply? We don't just look at the social development, but also on the impacts this has on the environment. This approach consists of several factors. The entire value chain or production chain needs to be observed. If we are aware of that, then we can make production more sustainable, also in the long run. This aspect of soil degradation, it also includes several actors as well, several stakeholders. It is about cooperating with universities, civil society, the public administration. We all have to do our part. In this sense, I think it is really key, or rather it is a key to addressing this growing need for food, but not only food, healthy food actually, that is produced sustainably. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ministra, por esta primera intervención. Thank you very much, Minister. Mrs. Nzimadala, over to you now. From the perspective of East Africa and its farmers and breeders, what do you see as challenges and opportunities in relation to sustainable land use and food demand? Elizabeth, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. I hope you can hear me. Distinguished Excellencies, I bring you virtual greetings from Uganda, from the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, but also from the Pan-Africa Farmers Organization. And I would like, first of all, to thank the organizers, the European Union Commission. I think there couldn't be a better time to serve this dessert of such a panel than at this time when we've just finished the menu of the Food Systems Summit. But also inviting farmers to be part of these discussions really shows the importance that you give to us as farmers, as better stewards of the earth. And of course, it is we that we have to make sure that we use the soil sustainably. So from the previous speakers, as you've had, distinguished excellencies, it is really projected that feeding the world population of 9.1 billion in the year 2050, of course, would require food production to be increased by about 70%. And especially when you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, it is the only region in the world with stagnant per capita food production. The annual productivity increases of 4 to 7% required if Africa were to rely on agriculture for economic development and food production. And what does this demand on productivity mean? that we can only be sustained if we incorporate sustainable food production practices. And personally, I believe the call to sustainable land use lies, with having health soils. Soil is very important, and it's an integral part of sustaining a health agroecosystem. It is described as the biological integrity of the soil community. And when you read FAO reports, according to them, health soils are the foundation of the food system. So our soils are the basis for agriculture. Again, we've heard from the opening video that 90% of the global food production depends on the soil. So it is the basis of agriculture. It is the medium in which nearly all the food producing plants grow. And that one we all know. So health soils, of course, they produce health crops that in turn nourish people and the animals. We are all talking about health diets, but there's no way we can produce health diets unless we take care of our soils. So the quality is directly linked to the food quality and quantity. And that one is not doubted at all. So health soils, of course, they deliver essential ecosystem services such as water purification and carbon sequestration. And I think my colleagues have already mentioned that. Studies also suggested that soil may be the greatest reservoir of biodiversity and the most valuable single natural commodity. So it is a key factor in building resilience. You cannot talk about building resilience. You cannot talk about combating climate change without talking about soil health. And the UN Food and Agriculture Organization declared 2015 the International Year of Soils. Precisely, this was to call for attention to the important role that soils play in our lives. But in contrast, again, unhealthy soils can have devastating effects on everything, from food security to global commerce to the quality of our environment. So the problem of nutrient deficient soils is particularly acute for smallholder farmers living in sub-Saharan Africa and also in South Asia. Of course, this deficiency in soils normally and diversely affect most of us as smallholder farmers, because the land is increasingly becoming diverse in these continents. It is becoming notoriously depleted of the most important vital nutrients. And again, it supports some of the highest population densities on the planet. When you talk of Africa and South Asia, these are some of the places that host the highest population densities on the planet. So we really need to look at the issue of soil health, especially in these continents, very critically. So Peter, I'll come back maybe to later on talk about the issue of policy and innovation and research, given an opportunity later. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Mrs. Zimadala. That was very interesting. Commissioner Wojciechowski, would you explain to us the perspective of the European Commission on sustainable land use and food demand?
Thank you very much, Peter. The first thing to understand is that in order to meet our demands, we cannot simply take from the soil. We also have to give something back. Pope Saint John Paul II told the farmers 20 years ago to resist the temptations of productivity and profit that work to the detriment of the respect of nature. He concluded that when you forget this principle, sooner or later the earth rebels. And so is with exploiting the soil by unsustainable practices. Healthy soil are essential for healthy ecosystem and healthy human societies. However, a board of experts has estimated that only 1/3 of soils in the European Union can be considered healthy. In other words, only 1/3 of soils can fulfill their many essential functions. Soils can only fulfill these functions if they are managed sustainably. In this respect, I am convinced that the approach of the new common agricultural policy and the farm to fork and biodiversity strategies put us on the path to reconciling sustainable land use with the world growing demand for food. It needs to be made clear that the strategy does not intend to trade food sustainability against food security. Quite the contrary, food sustainability is an integral part of food security. Agriculture and food production depend on supporting farmers to manage complex agrobiological systems. These systems are fundamental challenges that threaten both current food security and the future sustainability of agriculture. For example, climate change, the continued growth in global population and consumer demand, the rise in antimicrobial resistance, and systemic shocks such as health emergencies. The current COVID-19 pandemic shows the importance of a robust and resilient food system that can provide access to a sufficient supply and affordable food for our citizens, even under disrupted circumstances, and at the same time ensure the sustainability of primary production. It is not an option to sacrifice the long-term sustainability and fertility of our soils for short-term productivity gains. The strategy underlines that the best way to ensure food security in the near future is to switch towards more sustainable and thus more resilient food systems. To achieve these objectives, the Commission intends to involve all actors in the food value chain. Firstly, primary producers. Improving the sustainability of primary production is a central objective of the European Union's Farm to Fork strategy. Of course, the main instrument to help the transition of primary production is the Common Agricultural Policy. The overall allocation for the Common Agricultural Policy is around 387 billion in current prices, and the Commission is working to make sure that our ambitions are reflected in the national strategic plans submitted by member states. We are also bringing in food processors, for example, through the Code of Conduct for Responsible Food Industry and Business Practices launched in 2021. Finally, we will enable consumers to make an impact, for example, with better food labeling to allow more informed choices. In order to frame this evolution towards sustainable food systems in the EU, a new legislative framework for a sustainable food system will be proposed before the end of 2023. To this end, an impact assessment will be carried out from 2022 onwards, accompanied by multiple stakeholders consultations. In a global sense, the European Union is taking its responsibility and commitments towards the UN 2030 Agenda Zero Hunger goal very seriously. We remain the world's largest agri-food exporter and largest humanitarian donor. Food produced in Europe reaches consumers across the globe, and we are preferential trade partners offering extremely favorable terms for so-called least developed countries. Thus, EU agriculture makes a massive contribution to food security around the world. Across all these policy instruments, European Union is very focused on achieving a balance between meeting agri-food consumer demand and doing so in a future-proof, ecologically sustainable and responsible manner. I believe that the ultimate goal is to find a similar balance also within the global food system that brings the production and consumption patterns of agri-food commodities into a sustainable equilibrium within planetary boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. That was particularly clear. Now, let us turn to our second subject, please. How can food policy contribute to healthier soils? Now, this is clearly a red-hot topic, or it can be at least. But nonetheless, in the contributions to this subject, I would like to ask the panelists to be as concise as possible in order to prevent that we suffocate in the little time that we have for this high-level panel. Now let us hear what introductory remarks Joe Svinen has on this second subject of discussion.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think in a way, the Commissioner was already talking very much about policies, I think, in his comments just now, and quite rightly so. I think the EU farm-to-fork strategy, the new farm-to-fork strategy, I think is a major step in the right direction, not just for sustainable food systems in global, but also certainly for sustainable land use and healthier soils. It's a very encompassing approach. And I think that's really what we need as well in the world as a whole. It's just, as I mentioned already in my first comment, it is just one particular thing that one needs to do. It's a whole set of policies, a package of policies that needs to change or needs to provide the right incentives. And so along that, I think we need to look at all the actors involved in the food system. I mean, most of the land or a lot of the land in the world is managed by farmers. Farmers are the stewards of the land, of the soil. And therefore, we may have to make sure that farmers have the right incentives to invest in healthy soils. Of course, I think in generally farmers want to do that because it's the basis of their livelihood. But sometimes they do not get the right incentives of doing that. And so in this case, we need to reform policies to make sure that this is the case. Then the question is, even if they want to, can they? Okay, and then we have to think about their capacities of doing so. And capacities may have to do with, for example, access to finance, access to land itself as well. We had this comments earlier about the important role of access for women farmers. Women are a very large share of the farmers in the world, whether they have access to land. And there the issue is what's the institutional organization, what's the tenure rights system, etc. Europe actually is a very interesting laboratory in that way because the institutional organization of land use in Europe there's a huge variety going from a country like Ireland, where farmers mostly own the land, to countries like, for example, Slovakia, even Belgium, where we are here today, where most of the land which is used by farmers is actually rented by farmers. And so this can be organized in different ways. We not only have to look at what farmers do, but also, as I said earlier, about what the businesses do, the people who are in between, the organizations which are in between the producers on the land and the consumers of the products. They can play a very important role. I think the Commission also referred to that. And clearly also incentives for consumers are very important. I mean, we know now that consumer choices can have a major impact on how land is used. I mean, how food is produced in general, but also how land is used. And this can be done through awareness campaigns, through labeling, through certification of food, and through a variety of other incentives for consumers. I think it's a broad set of things that can be done. And different countries are trying to do this in different ways. Let me, for the sake of time, I'll stop here and pass the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Jo. Let me first give the floor to Mrs. Nzimadala. In Africa, particularly East Africa, do governments and the food-producing sector look at food policy from the angle of preserving good quality soils, or is this not, or maybe not yet, a subject of concern? What can you tell us?
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter, and thank you, Prof, for the introduction to this topic on policy and its contribution to health soils. Maybe before I can even bring it, before I can narrow the discussion to the East Africa level, I would like to first briefly talk about the continental level. And right from the outset, we know the 2021 Conference on Land Policy in Africa, which was held in Ethiopia, it really opened a resounding call for African countries to really develop pro-poor land policies and inclusive land tenure rights, particularly for women and youth, because this is also where RECs subscribe to the regional economic communities like the East Africa community, where the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation also fall, but also at continental level, as you know, that I've been the immediate past president and also director in charge of women affairs at continental level. We've also been part of the discussions at that continental level, where as farmers, we've been contributing to the discussions on land policy, because you all know that as farmers, we are usually implementers, but at times we are invited to contribute to the policy discussions. So looking at that particular conference, the theme was on land governance for safeguarding art, culture, and heritage towards the Africa that we want. And we all know that the Africa Union has an agenda, which is the agenda 2063. And when you look at aspiration number 5, it really looks at art, at culture and heritage as levers for building that Africa that we really want. So already at that level, we have a land policy, and having a land policy at continental level, also the regional economic community subscribe to that continental framework, which really strengthens their land rights. It enhances productivity and secure livelihoods. And without land rights, it becomes really difficult to invest and practice sustainable agriculture. So secondly, due to, of course, the adverse effects of climate change, it is very imperative that we protect agricultural land. We've been part of these initiatives, even at East Africa community level. And at the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, for example, we've had a position on matters of land, where we've said that agricultural land must be protected like wildlife is protected. And this has been our position to the regional economic community, because we also have an observer status with the East Africa Legislative Assembly, and this has always been our position. We've also observed, of course, a lot of development. When you come to the Eastern Africa region, you will realize that recently there has been conversion of vast agricultural land into real estate. But also there has been increased land grabbing, not only in Eastern Africa region, but also in Africa and probably across Africa as the continent, by mostly multinationals to produce industrial crops. And this has been at the expense of both the environment, but also the national food security. And both of which we have called for a land use policy that regulates and controls such practices. We've been at the head of these discussions, both at EAC level, but also presenting this at continental level. And lastly, for sustainable production, we have to develop soil management policies. These policies should be sound and practical. We need to incorporate other aspects, such as the production systems. I think Prof has already mentioned about that. The environmental considerations. We need to look at livestock management, the ecosystem services. We need to look at the natural flora and fauna and the hydrological or water management systems. The soil nutrition and health are also very key. And we have to do this, of course, looking at the related technologies, but also the investments that are needed for adoption to scale, and most importantly, by the farmers and the practitioners. Thank you, and over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you. I turn to you now, Commissioner. Food policy and healthier soils are a concern for the European Union, but not necessarily within the European Union alone. Food and feed imports into the EU from abroad, from overseas, a lot of that, meat and soy, are said to contribute to soil degradation in the producing countries. So linking that to food policies, what is your point of view on this issue?
Thank you, Peter. Without a doubt, soils are the base of our food system. They are the foundation of 95% of the food we eat. Soils are also at the base of our ecosystem. They host more than 25% of the biodiversity in the world, and they are the largest terrestrial carbon pool on the planet. We just discussed the importance of carbon farming at the European Union Agriculture Ministers meeting a week ago. Overall, soils deliver essential services for our society and planet. The provision of food, energy and raw materials, carbon sequestration, water purification and infiltration, nutrient regulation, pest control and recreation. There is a close correlation between the state of soils and their functions on one hand, and the sustainability of food systems and the related ecosystems on the other. Soil functions are affected by a number of problems that can be exacerbated by unsustainable food and farming systems, such as erosion, excess of fertilization and deficiency of nutrients, salinization, loss of soil organic matter and pollution. With our wide range of policy actions, I believe that the European Union is showing great ambition to restore and improve soil health. Due to its special significance, the European Union law already recognizes the specific nature of agricultural land. It permits restrictions on investment in farmland in order to protect legitimate public interests, for example, to prevent excessive land speculation, preserve agricultural communities, or to sustain and develop viable agriculture. As a part of commitments made under the Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategies, the Commission is taking further steps to strengthen soil protection. For example, the European Union adopted a new soil strategy in December 2021, which lays down the foundations for a new soil health law. The soil strategy also contains a comprehensive assessment of the sustainable use of soil across the European Union, including addressing desertification and land degradation. The soil strategy announced a number of actions in this context. For example, the preparation of the new soil health law, which will define healthy soils and lay down relevant objectives and targets. Also, the preparation of a set of sustainable soil management practices in consultation with member states and stakeholders. This would include regenerative farming in line with agroecological principles and adopted to the wide variability of soil ecosystems and types, and also identify sustainable soil management practices. Making sustainable soil management the new normal is the ultimate goal of the strategy. This will require coordination and working together at local, regional, national, EU and global levels to promote and implement sustainable practices. The Commission will also integrate sustainable soil use in EU policies. The Farm to Fork strategy also recognizes the central place of soil in our food system. For example, the most prominent production method specifically geared towards sustainability in organic farming. The Farm to Fork strategy, therefore, aims to boost organic production from accounting for 8.5% of the EU agricultural land today to 25% by 2030. Organic farming is overall system of farm management combining best environmental practices and preservation of natural resources, including soil, with balancing present and future needs. Organic soil are rich in life, overall biodiversity on organic land is 30% more than conventional on conventional farms, with more biomass and increased microbial activity. Organic farming methods promote soil life and humus formation, which are key to water capture and conservation, helping to protect soil from desertification and depletion of nutrients. Moreover, organic soil rich in humus also increase carbon storage by more than 25% compared to conventionally managed soils. This is a fundamental contribution to the fight against climate change. These are just some of the reasons why we have set the target of 25% of farmland for organic production. However, we are not only seeking to develop organic production, increasing organic consumption, for example, through promotion and education is also a key aim. This brings me to a key point. If soil is at the base of our food system, then consumers are at the top. We must ensure that consumers understand the critical importance of soil and support soil health in their food choices. We need to make it clear that soil supports our food system, so we need a food system that supports our soil. If we push with policy and if consumers pull with their food choices, we can make good progress to build such a system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Minister Undurraga, what is your government's perspective on this question? Do you promote in Chile a specific food policy with regard to soil preservation? And may I ask you for a concise contribution, please?
Thank you, Peter. Bueno, ya fue analizado por los panelistas muchos puntos que compartimos. El primero es entender.
I think that the panelists have already mentioned several important points. But what is essential is that we understand the entire system from the soil to the consumer, and we are trying to achieve this at our Chilean ministry. We try to link the producer to the consumer, if you will, because it is not just about production, but it is about feeding people, and that has to happen sustainably so that the individual factors are really all included so that consumers can make informed decisions. In this regard, it is particularly important that all political measures look at three points. First of all, soil health. This means, for example, that we use fertilizers sparingly. We are also talking about reforestation and about really activating the potential of soil as a carbon sink. Then, secondly, we need to stop soil degradation, by example, through less tilling, practicing practices that halt erosion and that preserve the humus layer. There are several means to do this. For example, also protecting flora and fauna by using ecological, organic farming practices. And it is important to firstly understand all this entire system and then harmonize our political measures accordingly so that we protect our soils and render them more efficient. We do have a program in Chile to do just this. We build up the humus layer on already degraded soils. We we try to convince the farmers that soil is the foundation of their agricultural production. So first of all, we raise awareness, and then, of course, we are trying to introduce a sustainability strategy for the entire agricultural sector. First of all, we need to consider and respect soil as a resource, and education is very important for that. We are building a comprehensive approach where we all need to understand that the quality of foods depends on healthy soils and the protection of soils. It is only in this way that we can produce food sustainably and healthy foods. Of course, what we also do is develop rural regions, and the soil is the foundation for that as well.
Topic on which we must be really quite short because time is running. How can research and innovation help the transition towards more sustainable land and soil management? I look again to Jo Svinen. The floor is yours again, please.
Thank you, Peter. This is my field, if you want. So I will restrict myself on saying so many things I would like to say on this. Let me just maybe briefly. Research and innovation are really important in this, and I think I do not need to convince anybody on this issue. It's about which innovations research is needed, because to understand what works, what does not work, when does it work, under which circumstances, under which local conditions does it work, how can it have an impact on biodiversity, on productivity of crops, how can a certain innovation affect greenhouse gas emission, etc. It's also crucial, I think, in terms of understanding why farmers will adopt certain innovations or will not adopt certain innovation, which policy will stimulate farmers to adopt certain innovations and will not. And for example, whether subsidies help, whether right now there's a major discussion, actually there's a panel in the Berlin Global Food Organization on repurposing agricultural policy. And the idea there is if we are still supporting our farmers, but in a different way by investing more in research and innovation rather than direct subsidies, how is that affecting their incomes? How is that affecting greenhouse gas emissions, nutrition, etc.? I mean, all these things I think are crucial. As I mentioned already, the adoption of technologies is crucial, but it's not just the technologies in itself, it's the package that we need. We need the institutional setup has to be right, the policy environment has to be right, the overall incentive environment has to be right, and of course the technologies have to be there. And for that we need innovation in all these areas and research to understand what the potential is there. There has already been a lot of references to some of the innovations. Think about the agroecological farm management idea, where there's a lot of work going on right now to see what the potential of is for that, what the trade-offs are when we start using this, etc. Intensification technologies as well, digital technologies, access to capital is really important. Finance, sustainable finance is a very important new idea that is being used, and to study how it can contribute both to sustainable land management processes, to sustainable production techniques, but also to sustainability in the ecological and the social aspects. And so, as I mentioned already, I mean, this is really where my organization, IFPRI, and the CGIAR is doing a lot of work, and we are more than happy to share some results with you if you would be interested. And I think finally, there is also a lot of innovation needed, I think, at the political level, okay? Because by bringing in these new players, if you want, before, I mean, a lot of, for example, if you look at the International Trade Organization before, it was very much looking at trade efficiency incomes, okay? But now bringing in nutrition, bringing in health, etc., bringing in climate change makes it much more complicated. And I think also there we need a lot of innovation and putting coalitions together in local constituencies, but also globally to make this work, to make this transformation of our food systems possible. Let me leave it at that, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jo. I would like to turn first to Commissioner Wojciechowski now. Commissioner, the European Commission, so I have heard, finances a number of high-profile research projects on the sustainability of the use of agricultural land. Could you very briefly, please, tell us about these research projects.
Thank you very much. And as you can imagine, the soil management is highly knowledge-intensive. Soils, land use, and the conditions affecting soils are very diverse. There is no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to soil management. Land managers, such as farmers, know very well that each plot of land needs to be managed differently, applying tailor-made strategies. A recent evaluation study of the CAP confirmed that the lack of technical knowledge and support was a key factor hindering the implementation of sustainable soil management practices. Addressing this challenge requires that we pool resources and instruments together support sustainable soil management. This includes improving soil monitoring and enhancing access to data, knowledge, and solution for soil health. The key to this lies not morally in conventional public policy instruments, but increasingly in research and innovation. To close this knowledge practice divide, in September 2021, the European Commission launched a research and innovation mission called A Soil Deal for Europe, financed under Horizon Europe. The Soil Deal mission is expected to become a major tool to generate solutions for soil health and to promote their uptake in rural and urban areas. With a budget of 320 million for the years 2021-2023, the mission proposes a novel approach to research and innovation. I would like to highlight three particular aspects. Firstly, the headline goal of the mission is to create 100 labs and lighthouses all over Europe by 2030. These living labs and lighthouses are real-life places where researchers work with farmers, land managers, advisors, businesses, and other stakeholders. Together, they tackle specific problems to co-create and test solutions that are adopted to local situations. With this approach, we hope to ensure that research responds to real needs on the ground. By working, the mission is expected to promote significantly the uptake of soil-friendly practices. Through the mission, we will also promote soil monitoring and support the development of the recently launched EU Soil Observatory. For land managers, being able to monitor changes in soil health is essential. The observatory should also increase society awareness on the importance of soil and improve training on soil-relevant matters. Finally, let me stress that while being an EU program, the Soil Deal mission will provide opportunities for international cooperation. We are looking for opportunities to cooperate with our international partners and welcome multilateral efforts to improve soil management worldwide. I'm looking very much forward to working together on soil health with partners around the globe. I'm sure that by sharing knowledge and taking inspiration from each other's experiences, we can advance together in preserving soil as one of our most precious resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think that we can all fully agree to what you have explained to us. Minister Undurraga, to you, please. I mentioned the strategic axes of your ministry again, because I have seen that the fifth one is about modernization and innovation. Does that also comprise the sustainability of the use of agricultural land? Please, a short contribution.
Thank you, Peter. Bueno, tal como dices, estos ejes estratégicos que están basados en este gran desafío que es el cambio climático.
Thank you. As you said, the strategic axis is based on climate change. It is really about accompanying this process. We want to make agriculture adaptive. There is not just one single strategy for sustainably using soils. It is really about analyzing the different systems. And hence, it is important that research looks and observes the individual local conditions, also cultural conditions, which we have in local environments. It is about indicators, and we want to look at how we can produce sustainably while at the same time getting producers involved. It is also about soil monitoring in Chile. We cooperate with the research ministry of our country, and there we have a council which is a research council for agricultural research and livestock. There we have a cooperation of farmers and researchers of different ministries. They address and define factors for sustainability, also with a view to soil, the most important factors for soils. So we want to introduce innovations, not just new technology, but also it is about using conventional methods, because traditional methods actually contain a lot of knowledge of how to best use and manage soils. And then look at this with a view to climate change. Many of our or rather of our communities, have already applied this and used this. It is not just about how people work on the fields. It is about more than that. As Peter pointed out, and I also don't want to take too much time away from Elizabeth, we understand this as a system, as a chain, and sustainably is based on 3 pillars. We are embarking on this path using innovation and technology, yet at the same time, we must also ensure food supply for our people based on these 3 pillars.
Mrs. Nzibandala, we would like to hear from you now on this subject. Does your organization, to governments in East African countries and maybe even the African Union, invest in research and innovation concerning the sustainable use of agricultural land? Please be very short.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. And I would like to pick it from where Prof really put forward the different characteristics of technologies and innovations if they are to really work. And he has also highlighted different requirements. And when you look at those technologies, of course, they require investments in terms of adoption, but also investments in terms of process. And I can say yes, the ESC and the Africa Union are really working on developing a number of technologies and innovations in soil health, though still a lot needs to be done. Because currently, when you look at the technologies that are needed to create health and resilient soil systems, they were all developed decades or millennia ago. And these have not proven really successful in terms of delivering soil health solutions to the last mile at scale. There's no single solution that can be said that, this has been able to deliver soil health, and so this can be put at scale. So despite decades of this research demonstrating the value of soil management strategies and the critical importance of soil health in smallholder farming, there are, of course, still very few regional examples. For example, when you look at conservation agriculture, the fertilizer deep pressment, which were developed in the 1980s for Asian rice systems. When you look at the crop rotation, the increasing soil carbon and mulching, the water harvesting, these have been widely promoted as soil sustainability sustainable management practices, and for several decades. But when it comes to the adoption rate, especially by the smallholder farmers, this has been very low. So the question again that comes up is, where is the problem? Where is the challenge? So if we are really to see a change happening, we really need to invest in removing some of these barriers to agriculture technology adoption. And some of these have already been mentioned by Peter, but we need to do this through provision of information, the materials to farmers. They need to have access to credit to be able to put such technologies to scale. We need agriculture extension. In some countries, the extension rate is as low as 1 to 500 households. And again, we need to build the capacity of farmers' organizations to be able to deliver, especially farmer-facing technologies. Thank you, and over to you.
Well, thank you very, very much for this closing contribution, Elizabeth. Ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, dear Commissioner, I'm not surprised that we have exhausted our time for this high-level panel so very, very quickly. Another piece of evidence how short time can be. Our subject discussed was complex and of great importance, so no wonder that your contributions were so intense. Thank you all for your interest and your commitment. Now, we have received a few questions in the chat function, and together with a colleague, we have looked at them. Quite honestly, and without wanting to be unfair to any of the members of the audience who asked the questions, all the subjects raised in the questions have, in one form or another, already been addressed by the panelists and by Joe Svinen. So putting them back again to the panelists would amount to a very, very high degree in repetition, which I do not think would be useful for anyone. Therefore, I have to announce that we are getting very, very close to the end of this high-level panel, but it is only natural that I would like to ask our host, Commissioner Wojciechowski, for some concluding remarks and a goodbye. Commissioner.
Thank you very much. This concludes our panel discussion. For me, it was enriching to gain an insight into the diversity of the geographical perspectives brought into the conversation. I will present a short summary of today's discussion at the ministerial meeting on Friday. I would like to express my gratitude to our panelists for joining today. Many thanks in particular to Professor Svinen for his informative introductions to the discussion topics, and to our moderator, Mr. Bader, for guiding us through this exchange. Finally, I would like to thank those of you in the audience. I hope that you enjoy the forum in its virtual format through the rest of the week, and I look forward to seeing many of you in person next year, if conditions allow. I certainly hope so. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Let us not forget the interpreters. Thank you too for your excellent work, and clearly also a big thank you to the staff in Berlin for their great work and support to make this event possible. That's it for now. All the best to all of you from my side. Keep safe. Hope to catch you again next year. Goodbye.